Hypertension can heal, that some cases of cancer will heal. And that's what we're really going to focusing on, is changing our bodies in such a powerful way. So please don't miss these things. And also try out the new taste. This is so important. There are so many different ways to cook healthful foods. And you'll find lots and lots and lots and lots of them. And if you never find anything you don't like, you're not trying enough. Experiment with things, and it's such a great thing to find the ones that you really like, so that healthy eating isn't a chore. But, as Jessica said, give the servers a day or two to adjust, because yesterday somebody was in the dining hall and they said, you know, I ordered the low-carb meal, where is it? And I want my steak rare, and I want snails, and yes, I just want McDonald's. And all those people were on the cruise. And they got off, and now we're here. So, yes, the waiters need some help. So, the sense of entitlement cruise is next week. This is the patience cruise, and we're going to be nice to establish, okay? So, and also, you're going to make lifelong friends. And that means each other, but it also means all the teachers. You get to know everybody, and we really are a family, I have to say. In fact, I took this picture at the end of the last group. There we go. And I took this picture as we were going to lunch. But I want to say also, I think the nicest thing that I have seen ever on the cruise was modeled by Michael Greger. Michael did this wonderful thing. Some of you were here last year? Yeah. Michael said, we are friends, we are family, I'm going to give you my cell phone number. He actually did. He gave out his cell phone number so you could call him up and ask a question or whatever. And I just thought, I mean, seriously, what a generous, kind thing Michael did. What, really? So anyway, I decided I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I am going to give you Michael's cell phone number. So, write this down. Michael's number is 240-252-8078. If you didn't get that, it's 240-252-8078. He'll fluff your pillow, he'll walk you through gastrointestinal problems, whatever. Michael's there to help. Okay, so also, don't forget to try out some new ideas. Go to classes of things that you never thought you would really necessarily need. We saw this with Albert Einstein. Late in life, he decided, a vegetarian diet, should I do that? Maybe it's a good idea. And he said, it's my view that the vegetarian manner of living, by its purely physical effect on the human temperament, would most beneficially influence the lot of mankind. And let me tell you, he said, I'm living without fats, without meat, without fish, but I'm feeling quite well this way. It always seems to be that man was not born to be a carnivore. And look what it did for him. Yes. So, the last thing I want to tell you, I don't know if anyone recognizes this man. He looks like a patient, but this is a doctor. This is Dr. Anthony Sadalero, who became famous because he wrote this book called Recalled by Life. And I just want to tell you Dr. Sadalero's story in case you haven't heard this before. I met him a number of years ago, but he was famous by that point. When Anthony Sadalero was in his 40s, he was a doctor. He's in Philadelphia, on a meteoric rise in his medical career, and he was named president of the Methodist Hospital in Philadelphia. And he was working hard, and they were building new wings in the hospital under his direction. And every year, you had an annual physical. So he went downstairs to the radiology, and he did his annual chest x-ray and everything. Got back up to the administrative office, and the phone rang. And it was the radiologist who knew him. He said, Tony, you got something on your lung. I think it's on your lung. Come down here. So he went back downstairs, and they put the x-ray on the screen. And they saw something that appeared to be on his lung, and densities also in other parts of his chest, on his sternum and so forth. They arranged a bone scan that very same day, and they found metastatic cancer on his sternum, on his ribs, on his skull. And they did medical tests in the coming days and found that he had prostate cancer which in young people, in older people, is rather common and slow growing. But in a young person, a person under 50, it's a very aggressive cancer that kills you fast. That's what he had. He had a metastatic prostate cancer that was beyond the treatable stage. And this was not what was on his schedule at that point. And he obviously was in a panic about what to do. And to make everything worse, his own father had lung cancer and died shortly after this. And so when his father died, he got in the car and he drove up to New Jersey and he tried to console his mother and bury his father while dealing with his own panic. And he got on the New Jersey Turnpike then to come back to Philadelphia, and he decided, I'm just going to be the best doctor I can in whatever time I have left. And it was a cold day, and there were a couple of hitchhikers by the side of the road. And he thought, I'll pick them up, and frankly, I wouldn't mind having somebody to talk to. And so they get in the car, and one of them fell asleep in the back, and the other's talking with him. And as fate would have it, they had just gotten out of macrobiotic cooking school. And he explained to them that he had cancer and he was going to be dying and probably would be dead within 6 months or a year. And one of the kids in the car said, well, Doc, what's the big deal? Cancer doesn't have to kill you. Why don't you change your diet? And Tony was just annoyed with these people with their adolescent view of the world. They didn't understand that he was a doctor and he knew exactly what he was stuck with. But by the time they got to Philadelphia, one of them said, come on, let's go to a health food store. Let me send you some information. And so actually a package did arrive for him about a week later, 67 cents postage due. And it had some macrobiotic books in it and different things. And part of it was a story of another person, a doctor, who had had breast cancer, who went macrobiotic and did really well. And he thought, this sounds like quackery to me, but I don't know. And he found that doctor and he called her up at home. And her husband answered the phone. And he said, I'm Dr. Anthony Savalero, and I read about your wife. Can I speak with her? Because I heard that this diet helped her enormously with breast cancer. And the husband said, well, it was great, but she went off it, and now she's doing really badly. And no, she can't come to the phone now. So Tony started thinking this through, and he thought, that was a hormonal cancer, I've got a hormonal cancer, I got no other choice, I'm just gonna try this. So he hooked up with Danny Waxman and some others, and he said, I don't know how to cook, I don't know how to do anything, guide me. And so he started to learn how to eat rice and things, and he blew up his first pressure cooker load of rice, but found that he could sort of do this. And he would bring chopsticks and rice and things into the doctor's lounge at the hospital, and the other doctors felt sort of sorry for him. I mean, let's humor the guy who's dying. Except Tony didn't die. After about 3 weeks, the pain of the metastases had gone, so he no longer used any painkillers. And after about 2 months or 3 months, his energy was what it had been before. And the other doctors noticed that he had color in his cheeks and he wasn't dead. Anyhow, so about a year or so later, he never gave up his skepticism, but he said, there's got to be something about Eastern medicine that I have been missing up till now, and I don't understand it, but I need to open up to it. So he wrote this book called Recalled by Life that became a huge, big seller, and he was on all the TV shows and things. And so I called him up at that time. This was many years ago. And he invited me to come meet with him, and we spent a couple days together, and we were talking about his experience. But he then told me something very worrisome. He said, I've done so well, I decided I probably don't need the diet anymore. And he said, I brought in some fish first, and I wasn't eating fish, I brought that in, and then I brought in some chicken, and just to see how I would do. And I said, well, how are you doing? He said, well, not so hot. I started to get some swelling in my hands and things, and there's something not so good, so I'm trying to get back onto the diet. But he couldn't get back. About 3 weeks after this, when I got home, I called him up, and his voice was slurred, like a person on drugs. I said, Tony, you're on painkillers. He said, my cancer's back. He was on painkillers for the cancer, but 2 weeks later he was dead. Now, he never knew, and I don't know, that the diet he'd been on before is what caused his cancer, or that the diet change is what cured him, or if he was still on that diet today, would he be doing well? We don't know these things, but what we do know is that these amazing molecules that are inside the foods we eat can help us or hurt us depending on the choices we make without our knowing that. And if we could come to understand how these things work, at least enough to put it to work in our own lives, we can take advantage of that power. You don't have to know how fire works in order to decide I'm going to use that power. And we don't have to know how the diet works necessarily to decide this is my best shot. This is what I'm going to use. So, there are lots and lots and lots of things that I hope you'll take advantage of. Please go to as many classes as you can. Please enjoy the food. But there are a number of things that I want to offer. But the speakers also have things that you can connect with going forward after you get off the cruise. We have an app called the 21-Day Vegan Kickstart, and we made this for our doctors because it's in English and Spanish, and you can give it to patients. But it's menus and recipes and cooking videos, all free. It's on your iPhone, it's on your Android, there's no charge, and it's really big and very popular. If you ever were frustrated, whether you're a healthcare provider or a person who's a patient in a clinic, that sometimes dietitians know less about diet than you do. And that's going to be frustrating. Or the dietitian might be all keen on Atkins or something like that. So to solve that problem, we set up something called the Preferred Dietitian Referral. And if you go to preferreddietitianreferral.org, you will find a registered dietitian in your state who practices a vegan diet, is knowledgeable, and does telehealth. And even if your insurance doesn't cover it, it's like $75 for a dietetic visit or whatever. Get somebody in your life who's a knowledgeable person, because no matter how great things go, there are bumps in the road and there are questions you're going to have. It's great to have somebody you can call. So that's what Preferred Dietitian Referral is. We also have Find a Doctor, same thing. And we have every Tuesday, we do a lot of support groups online for our research studies. So now we do one for everybody. It's Eastern time, Eastern time at noon, 12 o'clock. Just go to National Diabetes Program, and it's a live support group that anybody can join over Zoom. Anna, Herbie, and I and others teaching, totally free. The Barnard Medical Center, as Jessica was mentioning, we set this up a number of years ago to see people live in our office, but also on telemedicine. It's barnardmedical.org. And our conference is coming up in August, the biggest and a huge conference with probably the best food you'll ever have at a medical conference in Washington, D.C. So when it's dripping hot and miserable in Washington, please join us. And finally, a lot of the speakers have books and other resources, and I hope you'll come by and have a look at them. Here are a couple of mine, but there are many, many other terrific ones. And when you get it, give it to somebody else. So that's what I want to finish with is yes, there's the lifeboat drill and all that stuff. What we're doing is we've got something that is more life-saving even than that, and that is understanding about food. And the key thing about it is to not keep it to yourself, but to share it. Because one of us changes our diet, that's great. One of us learns something, that's great. But when you tell somebody else about it at work or in your family, you're giving them information that can save their lives. And better still, when you go on social media, on your Facebook page or your Instagram or your tweet or whatever it is, you're throwing a rock into the water that sends ripples to people that you never even met. And you're going to inspire somebody with a new recipe that you put on, or a food photo, or a chapter of a book, or something like that. You're going to save lives of people that you've never interacted with. If one of us does that, that's great. If this many people do that, it's huge, and that's what changes the world. Thank you very much. Thank you.